Today's episode of Poets at War is sponsored by the following.
I'm Ian Wilson, and I create graphic art using primarily traditional methods, supplementing with digital where it's needed. I use a real pen, a real paper, a real graphite to make my art. I like to feel my art. I've always been this way. I love the feeling of a pen or pencil in my hand, the sound of graphite scratching paper, and I love the sight of a nice black line making its way across the page. So why choose traditional art over digital? Traditional art has an organic, natural quality that seems to be missing from most digital illustrations. The illustrated books and comics that were made in the days before digital have an excellence and staying power that is just as vibrant now as it was decades ago. These are the stories that stay with you. Dr. Seuss, Winnie the Pooh, Where the Wild Things Are. People still read these. I'm currently working on my own graphic novel series, Legend of the Swordbearer, and I've also had the privilege to draw graphics for 2 motion comic series, along with illustrations for a small magazine, Logosophia magazine, and various book covers. Don't let traditional art fade into the dust. Help me keep it alive. You won't regret it. Visit my website at ianthomaswilson.com for more info.
Checking in with Benjamin Curlee, we discussed today on Poets at War the idea of to gear or not to gear. Should you buy that new computer? Should you buy that new fancy gizmo or gadget to help you in your art and war? Well, let's find out on Poets at War.
Yeah, so basically our thing that we decided we were going to talk about is tech, but we were going to specifically come at it from the perspective of basically, like I put it in the Shakespearean way, to gear or not to gear. And I want to talk the philosophy of, especially a Christian, being a good steward, all that other kind of stuff, and spending money on the tools that you think you need to create, especially as poets and everyone else, artists, other sorts of folks like myself, the poets at war. When do we spend money on gear and when do we not? And I'm guessing you have your own set of principles for yourself that you've had over the years.
Absolutely.
You've fudged them here and there when you really want something and gone back and been like,
when the tax return is good enough, then suddenly the reasons change.
but then also, like, I think you've probably done the opposite at times where you've hamstrung yourself for as long as you possibly can, and then when you get the new tool, it's like, oh my goodness, a bright new world. So what are your, like, I guess just open it up, random rambling thoughts, and we'll tangent out from there. What's your thoughts? What's your philosophy?
Yeah, that immediately makes me think of when it comes to camera gear. I intentionally prevented myself from upgrading my camera for the longest time. Because camera technology during the last decade has just been expanding by leaps and bounds. So it's like, wait 1 year, the technology is just so much better. So if you don't need the upgrade, then just continue waiting. It's worth it to continue waiting because it depreciates so quickly. But I had the first real camera I bought was a Canon T2i, and
which I have now.
Yeah, which I used that for about 7-8 years. I bought it when it was fairly new. I think I bought the floor model from Best Buy because they didn't have any others in stock at the time. It was like everyone wanted it. It was the hot new not mirrorless DSLR that could actually do a native 23.97 frames per second. The only camera before that could do it was the Canon 7D. All the other cameras, it was the closest you could get was a 25 frames per second in a PAL format, or you had to jump up to 30. So it was in having interchangeable lenses and whatnot.
Do you want to explain to the poets who aren't as tech savvy what that actually means in actual artistic terms?
Yes, what that means artistically is it gets you a very cinema frame rate. What you're used to seeing, just what your eye is used to for cinema. Some people try to say that 24 frames per second is natural to the eye. I don't know. I can perceive higher frame rates, honestly. So I don't think that
it's an
argument
aesthetic
really
choice.
Yeah, it is an aesthetic choice. And for that reason, I think it is here to stay, even when you've got higher frame rates, especially. I mean, we saw that on display when Peter Jackson decided to double the frame rate and do 48 frames per second for the Hobbit trilogy.
Right.
And that didn't go very well.
And that feels especially weird to me because I'm like, why not 60? What's going on?
Yeah, I know.
Here?
Exactly. It's like if you're already going for a higher frame rate, then just push it to something normal. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And
But
60
yeah,
is
so
more
I
like
had-
a video
yeah.
game frame rate. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had that camera. I keep wanting to say a decade. I don't think it was quite a decade. I think it was 7 or 8 years. And I refused to let myself upgrade for 2 reasons. One, I really didn't have, for the majority of that time, I didn't have a job that actually would fund new gear. Filmmaking was a hobby, so I couldn't quite justify it on those grounds. But even when I thought I could, I refused to let myself, because I knew I wasn't pushing that piece of hardware to its limit.
Right.
I was actually the handicap, not the gear.
Right.
And until I learned to push the gear to its absolute limit, then new gear was going to be wasted on me. So that's actually a lot of advice. That's actually the advice that I give people who are asking, should I continue learning or should I upgrade my camera? Well, is someone who's using the exact same camera creating a better looking image than you? Yes. Oh, then you need to invest in learning. You need to invest in education, because that's gonna cross over all different types of tool sets. Another side tangent to that I was thinking about here before we hopped on this call was, did you think that we would get to a day when rear projection would come back around in technology, like in how we make films? Right. But here we are with video LED walls, basically doing rear projection. It's the great grandchildren of rear projection technology.
I mean, CRTs are coming back around
for the
sake of frame rate and everything else.
Exactly, exactly. But the techniques behind, like the techniques and the knowledge is all there. The technology has changed, but the techniques have carried forward even beyond that. Like,
right.
It's actually become cost effective to go back to having a physical screen behind someone than going green screen.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
Go figure, depending on the type of shoot, obviously. There's some things that it totally makes sense to go green screen. So I'm not saying green screen is archaic. It just has a different purpose. So where was I going with this? Yes. So investing in the knowledge will cross tool sets.
Right.
And will carry over between the different tools that you have. And actually, having that knowledge will help you overcome the limitations of the tools that you currently have in your tool bag. Yeah. Because you know how to get around something and get what you want, even when you don't have the tools to do it right.
Right. Yeah.
And in all honesty, that's what the creative arts are. Like, this is why people have a really hard time judging arts objectively, because there is no right. I mean,
well, the fact is I can tell a story with my finger and some sand.
Yes.
Like, I can write text in the sand. I can draw pictures in the sand, right? Yes. Like I can do anything from that all the way up to, feature, TV Netflix series. Yeah. Like,
so the medium and the tools and all those things, there is better ways than other ways to do it. But if you want to judge right from wrong, it's the end result when it comes to art.
Right. And you're one who has made, you're living more so off the technical side of those things, but you still have the artistic eye. And that's one of the big things that I think a lot of guys, they get way too far into the tools and they end up losing sight of the artistic element. And the
Yes.
artistic element is also like the link in between them is the knowledge, but I feel like it's so much easier to fall away from learning constantly if you don't have a driving force of wanting to see something particular and beautiful.
Mhm.
Right, that artistic drive to create something, right?
Correct.
And that's, I feel like if you think your drive is going to be fixed, your artistic drive is going to be fixed by having more options available to you. That's just crazy talk to me.
No, it is. It is. Every established creative that I've ever talked to has readily admitted to me that some of their best art comes when they are handicapped, when they have constraints.
Yep. That's one. And the thing is, like, always be pushing those constraints, always be pushing those things outward, because
Absolutely.
you're going to be learning tool sets and skills that are going to net you other work to support your art and all that other kind of stuff.
Correct.
And,
having crappy tools does not justify crappy art.
Right. Exactly. Because there are people who do straight Da Vinci in the sand, with some of these castles and things that they make and whatever else, going back to the whole sand idea, it's like, it doesn't matter what the medium is. You can make something incredible and beautiful if you work at it hard enough and long enough. And, I think that's something that I've had so much inspiration in the artistic area that I've had to really nail down in a lot of my technical areas. And that's something I'm continually having to do, because my imagination gets hold of me and it just takes off and runs,
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons you and I have always kind of done well.
Oh, absolutely. Well, no. And when you did your studio tour and walkthrough, like, if anyone didn't pick up on it, what you are doing is you are piecemealing tools to fit your creative workflow.
Right. Yes.
Because the workflow that works for you doesn't exist natively.
Right.
And in fact, for a lot of people, it doesn't.
Right.
They find a way.
Yet they copy the typical, minimalist style, or, whatever, or they don't actually try to create. And this is something that I actually learned not from an artistic endeavor at all. It was something I did to, make money and make a living. And that's when I worked for iBlazon, which is a cell phone tablet company. I had to create functioning systems in order to pick and pack large orders, of cell phone and tablet cases for schools, and I had to do it in a way that was going to keep track of inventory and also not mess with other orders, as far as who we're dealing with first versus later when we run out of stuff, planning for stuff coming in, all that other kind of stuff. And it was really eye-opening to me to have to create these systems on the fly during Christmas time, and make sure that they function well and try to think of all the variables. Yeah. And that's exactly what I've tried to do here, is create something where I have the least amount of friction to the things that my brain has to do in order to accomplish whatever the goal is.
Yeah.
And people, we've removed individualism from tech thanks to people like Apple. I love Apple, but it's so funny looking at the Apple ads from the 80s and they're all like, be an individual, don't be it's like, come on, man.
At the same time, I'm noting that they're moving back to that. Like, they're giving more color options than they ever, since like the 80s.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yep.
Ways to express,
and they did that briefly in the 90s too, with like the gel color stuff.
But who wasn't? Like, what company? What, like, that was right. The agenda to push was like every color you could possibly imagine, right. And then some.
Right. Exactly. And so, like, I think the thing that there's people that fall on my side that their imagination kind of gets the imagination is the thing to watch and keep from running away. And then there's things like you and some other folks that I've learned who occasionally have, and I'm not saying you do very much, but you have the gear side of things sort of run away. And I'm not even saying necessarily buying stuff. I'm saying like your brain is constantly thinking in gears,
Yes.
as opposed to actually creating a story, right?
Yes.
Or something like that. And so it's good that we can have relationships like this. And I would encourage any kind of artistic folks that are listening, or even any, technical people who are listening, get a friend who's stronger in the other space,
Yes.
and really work with them, even if it's not on the same project. Just work with them socially in order to shore one another up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And that's, no, I haven't. It's on the bookshelf behind me, but a book back there called Good to Great that dives into that idea. In one of its chapters is finding people who, learning your weaknesses, and then finding people who fill those, and then trusting those people to fill those.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really incredible, the journey we've been on. We've known each other for something 15 plus years at this point, and we've been able to really help each other out in a lot of those areas. I know sometimes I go on tangents, you go on tangents, and we love each other for it. That's the thing, and I know if I ever have any kind of real technical question, I can come to you, and usually it's a brainstorming question. It's not an open-ended brainstorming question, not even a full yes or no. And but it gets you thinking, and then you get excited about it, and we can feed off that energy. You tend to be more introverted, but around me, you've got all the extrovert energy in the world. You know what I mean? Like we just keep feeding back and forth. And so it's one of these things where I think even beyond, to gear or not to gear, relationships are the thing that are going to get you the gear.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that and not just the gear, the big shiny brand new thing that all the YouTubers are talking about, but actually talking with folks. There's things that I would have never thought of unless we had XYZ conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, I have one of those that could work in this situation. I could patch that in through here, and that's one of the joys of some of the conversations that we have on gear is I remember what we were talking at Fight Laugh Feast last year about SDI matrices. Which everyone hears that and goes, what?
What are you talking about? Yeah.
But the idea is it's a box that you can send video signals to a whole bunch of different locations, and actually through the firmware of this computery thing actually decide what goes where and assign inputs and outputs to each other on the fly. And just the possibilities of something like that, which we don't need, which we don't have any use for at this particular time, but just playing with the puzzle piece in our brains and turning it around and seeing if there is a possibility is just a joy,
Well, and having that knowledge there, because you don't know when that knowledge is going to be really useful. So recently we were consulted to design a podcast studio. And the way we initially tackled it was we wanted it to be, fully remotely produced. In the end, they stripped all the remotely produced side of it, and they wanted a lot more customization. But going in, we were trying to overcome all of the things that we knew to be issues from previous remote produced studios. And that's where a severe lack of knowledge actually hurt me. And I didn't have solutions for things. At least I didn't have good solutions for things until we brought in someone who was an expert in that field with that equipment. And he was making recommendations like, I didn't even know that existed.
Right.
Like, that solves all my problems in this one box.
Right. Yeah. And keep in mind, there's finding ways to take away the friction, but also if you can figure it out and jerry rig something, do it, because you're going to learn stuff through that too.
Oh, absolutely.
I've told you this multiple times. I'll say it. I think I've told them once, maybe on the podcast. I'll say it again. But my first video was made with Windows Movie Maker, and it was collecting animated GIFs and little clips from fan sites of a pro wrestler named Sting. And I had these clips, and I didn't know how to mute them using Windows Movie Maker, and I couldn't find out how to do it. And so I actually went in and found some programs to convert those videos to animated GIFs and throw them into Windows Movie Maker. So, I mean, it was actually 2 programs, one to break them out into individual frames and then one to put them back into a GIF, you know.
But
so
you found a solution. Yeah.
Right.
No, you found a
solution. A really janky solution, but I found a solution. And through that, I learned how to make animated GIFs. And I could actually use that in other situations that needed to create animated GIFs. I still use that today, you know, for various things. And learning how things work, pushing buttons, seeing if you break it. That's, you know, as Miss Frizzle would say, get messy, make mistakes, you know, etc. Like, that is something that I think people who have a perfectionist bone in their body that they contend with have a really hard time doing. They don't want to try things that they don't know if it'll work or not, right? And yeah, there's a certain amount of that you can't do it in a professional setting. You can't do that when you're working for a client or whatever. But I'm saying just for yourself, if you're not breaking eggs to figure out how to make an omelet, like you can't just take people's advice and make that your own thing, you know. It's so
well, that's I mean that principle, like, man, I'm not a person for tattoos, but if I was to get a tattoo, the thing I would probably get tattooed is there's always a solution.
It's true.
Like, generally speaking, of course there's exceptions, but generally
alchemy
always a solution.
Right.
What's the problem? Let's stop. Let's think about it. The more people we get involved, there is a solution.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's going to be a great solution, but there is a solution.
Right. Exactly.
And sometimes you don't have time to apply that solution. Sometimes you just have to say, okay, we can't do this.
Right.
But,
exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've said to gear or not to gear, and you've kind of given out some of the basic ideas of what you're looking for before you upgrade gear. What about services? You know, we talked about, you know, gear, like physical hardware gear.
Yes.
And everyone wants the shiny new object, but let's talk, you know, various software online services and, you know, etc. When do you need to upgrade to, you know, Adobe Suite? Never.
Yeah.
But we, you know what I'm saying? Like, what do you think about services and how? Because there's not just, like, even for the writers who are listening, there's all kinds of services that can really help you. Campfire Blaze, you know, some of these other, you know, writing services, and you can just do that in a journal too. But like, so what do you think is what's your rule of thumb for services?
Yeah, this is where you've got to detach your emotions and you've got to find a way to measure ROI, whatever that ROI you determine, or, you know, whatever that ROI needs to be for you, but you've got to find a way to measure what that is. So what is the name of that curve now? Basically, there's a graph, there's a curve, and you've got time and quality, and slowly that curve just you spend a little bit of time on something and the quality shoots upward, and then it slowly starts to flatten out as you spend more and more time on it, and the quality increase per time is like very minimal. And so you want to find that perfect point where quality and time just kind of meet, and it's the best it can be to give you the most amount of ROI. And so that's where services come in, because services are very rarely, I'm walked away from the mic here, I realized services are very rarely tailored to your specific need. They are by necessity general.
Right.
And so they are going to they're only going to give you a limited amount of quality.
Right.
But they're going to save you heaps of time generally.
Right.
So at some point, depending on how long something is going to take you, it is worth it to invest in that service to save you time, because you can shift that time to policing quality someplace else.
Right. Right.
You just have to find a service that gives you enough quality.
What are some services that really stand out to you that you use, if you have any? Because you obviously you have more of a editor workflow. That's your main sort of thing, but you do a whole bunch of different things. You've done 3D modeling, you've done, all these sorts of things. Like, what are some services, and why? I'm trying to get down to the principle of why do they work for you? Why do they hit that ROI? So you can kind of apply that, example to anything.
Yes. So as far as like software goes, what I spend the bulk of my time, what I have open pretty much every day on my desktop is Slack for team communication, Final Cut for editing. Final Cut is the most efficient, optimized editor for our typical workflows. And I can circle back around to that in a little bit. What else? Email, and then calendar app.
Are there any you pay for?
On a day-to-day basis, not typically in my, no, I take that back. Well, yeah. Not on a day-to-day pace. Not that I use daily, but there are specific things. So for editing photos, now this is my after hours, what I do for a hobby. This is not part of my normal professional workflow.
Right.
But for my Instagram, generally they're edited with Adobe Lightroom on my phone, and I pay for that. I pay the $4 a month or whatever it is, because it allows me to immediately pull that photo from the camera, put it in my phone, and then upload it. I can get better results when I bring it into my computer. But if I wait until I bring it into my computer, it'll be weeks and weeks and weeks before I've actually edited that photo. So it is best for me to do a good enough job with Lightroom and get it up. And that, and most people don't notice a significant, like, they don't think it hurts the image.
Right.
One that we use in our professional workflow is Descript for transcribing video and audio files. That has been extremely helpful depending on the project. So for large documentary type stuff, being able to get full transcripts of interviews and search them and whatnot, so nice.
Yes.
It's actually allowed us to take a unique workflow where we have writers just editing the text in Descript. Like, they're actually doing a rough edit, just using the text, arranging it and deleting stuff and moving things around. And then we'll take that, and Descript can actually export out a Final Cut XML file that it's janky.
Right.
But generally we can relink that with the actual video footage, and we'll have a rough edit of the show before we then start polishing it further. But that allows us to have a writer who doesn't know how to edit video be very involved in helping us craft that story.
I definitely want to get back to that, not just Descript, but the general idea of writing as editing for video and other things. But the one thing I'll mention, I use otter.ai for a lot of those things. I'm not currently subscribed to it because I haven't had as much need. I can use YouTube in a pinch for doing basic stuff.
YouTube and Facebook auto-generated captions have gotten really good.
They've gotten really good. If anything, like, reading the stuff aloud is still going to be right 90% of the time, and they're not going to get the wrong word.
No, dude, I remember when I was working at Wretched, I remember one time that I was in charge of getting volunteer transcriptionists,
Mm-hmm.
and something fell through, and the volunteer I had lined up was not able to complete it, so it landed on me. And I'm just like, yeah, I guess I could sit here and spend the next 2 hours typing out for a half-hour show, or I will find a way to route the audio from the computer back into the computer so that Google Document will pick it up as a microphone, and I will just play the video and it will transcribe it, and I will go back and clean it up and add grammar, and it will save me tons of time.
Yep. And people have taken note of that. AI transcription is a huge thing. Otter is a little bit more basic. Descript is really feature full. You can even add in words when it has enough audio to get a AI generated version of the voice.
Yeah,
and
for
it
an
sounds
extra
fairly
cost,
natural. Right, but yeah,
but it can, and
right.
that's really creepy. But yeah.
And people have gotten in trouble for that, and there's still laws to be written about that sort of thing. But
Absolutely,
it's pretty good. There's a guy on TikTok, I have to mention this because you need to check him out, but he does voice and visual deep fake for Ian McKellen as Gandalf. And
I stumbled across some
him?
new stuff. Yes.
Yeah. And there's this really, really funny one he did where he was working out in the gym with Sam, and Sam's like the cameraman kind of situation, and he's like, I have a feeling your juicy hobbit glutes have a role to play in this story still. And then it shows, the footage from the movie of Sam lifting Frodo, and I can carry you. So he's like, don't skip leg day. Hilarious. But yeah, I'll circle back now. AI is one of the big things, and I'm not going to get into all the metaphysics and stuff. I did that with James O'Farron in episodes 2. We really got into the deep stuff when it comes to what he calls Christian transhumanism, which is an amazing term in my opinion. But the main thing with AI, as far as like what it can do for people like us who create things, the things I'm most excited about are twofold. The next big step, well, the very next big step, and is still currently going on in basic motion capture animation, is limb recognition. For AI. That this right now they can totally map a face and have really scarily accurate at times live animation of models. You just being on a webcam, it's insane. Limbs are a little bit not quite there yet. They're still working on limbs, especially legs. Hands are less of an issue. They're starting to get that a little bit better. If you want to check out some of this kind of stuff, you can search on YouTube. There's a guy, Cloud something or other. Just look up Cloud AI or something like that. You probably end up finding it. But he by Cloud AI or something. Anyway, but he documents these sorts of things and tries out all these algorithms and things, and talks about them. But once you can actually animate a character without any extra motion capture hardware or software, like it's going to be insane. And then comes the modeling. There needs to be a revolution in modeling. There has been some AI attempts at that. There has been, and this is the part where it gets kind of crazy to me. Did you see Corridor Digital's TikTok influencer generated by AI thing that they came out with?
I don't think I saw that one.
So they put together a whole bunch of different Corridor Digital is great for those who want to check it out. This is they really push the limits of this kind of stuff.
YouTube old timers.
Yeah, they've been around a while.
Yeah,
they're so good.
Good stuff.
But they actually had this thing where they created a model for a this character who is a TikTok influencer. And basically the idea, and they gave her a set, and they basically just a giant 3D mansion kind of thing, and they fed in a bunch of scripts that they had a person read, and so they're feeding in the text of those scripts, which are just basic like random TikTok video template kind of stuff. So they feed all that in for the text, but they also feed in the voice actress.
Mm-hmm.
And then they basically, feed in a bunch of different animation things and whatever else. And they put all these different AI systems together to where you basically can it will generate, it takes a few, like probably about 10-15 minutes to get a semi pre-rendered version, whatever of whatever, but it can generate a 60-second TikTok video that's comprehensive about a particular topic. And like I said, I didn't want to get into a lot of the ethics, whatever, but of course people get more spooked out about this kind of stuff than I do. But it was so funny watching it and seeing them get weirded out by it, because a lot of the original videos were all sad, bored, and angry. They very, very rarely had any happy videos.
grabbing the strong human emotions that are easy to project, and
exactly, exactly. So I just thought that was really funny, and you should definitely check that one out if you. I will definitely check that out. It made me think a lot, like with Descript. We're probably, if things keep, obviously we've got issues worldwide with all kinds of economic stuff, and then anything can flip and whatever else. I'm not even talking about that. But as far as the trajectory goes right now for the technology itself and the research being done, in 30 years, we could realistically have novelists be able to create somewhat janky looking, whatever, but essentially 3D rendered movies from text.
No, man, I am convinced that the future of entertainment, I think VR is the right direction for it. I think the future of entertainment is interactive games. I mean, really? Listen, I could spend $30 more if I want to buy popcorn and a drink to sit down and watch a 2-hour movie.
Right.
Or I can spend 60 on a really good video game.
Or you could spend $5 a month and watch tons and tons of movies. There's that problem too.
Sure. But that 60 doesn't get me 4 hours. That 60 gets me 80, 100, 200 hours.
But people can't do math, man. Come on. Like, do you know about the third pound burger? Do you know about that? Yeah, with A&W. A&W, for those who are listening, A&W puts out a third pound burger to compete with the fourth pound burger, and they think people are stupid and think that it's somehow smaller than a fourth pound burger.
Because 3 is a smaller number than 4. Something Common Core math. Sorry, cheap shot, but I'm homeschool. I had to.
I agree. The video game thing is definitely appealing, but I'm seeing a good amount of pushback, partially because people are so apathetic. In general, video games actually take, positive.
No, that's true. Action. It does take work.
It's like reading a book. Some people love reading books. Some people love sitting and reading a book because they're actively doing something. But when you're sitting and watching a movie, you can jump in and out. You don't have to be 100% focused the entire time like you do with a video game. And if you get good at a video game, you can zone out, but like that takes time too, so but yeah, I'm not poo-pooing your idea. Like I
don't think we've seen the end of I don't think we're anywhere close to the end of that line of entertainment.
No, totally. VR is going to continue on, and until I can actually feel like I am actually battling with a sword, like I can feel the reverberation back into my hands from striking something, it's not there yet for me. You know what I'm saying?
Not yet.
When I can feel
imagination station,
right? The imagination stations. Yes. And see, that's one of those weird things too, because like I sit there and I wonder, this is the dorky tech side of my brain, like how exactly it works, of course. You know what I'm
Okay,
saying?
yeah.
And
No,
the
right?
only thing I can come up with, honestly, and this is compelling in and of itself, and I think an actual place that has not been tapped very much at all by people who actually research this stuff on a code binary level, but the imagination has been broken down in now we're getting into philosophy a little bit, but we've been broken down into it has been stripped down to its most base elements where we're just fizzing, right? And the fact is, like, we have this innate ability to create images in our mind, and use various pieces of sound and visuals to remix things in our own imagination. And that in and of itself is an exceptionally powerful computer that is beyond the capabilities of anything. And I'm talking just the imagination. I'm not talking about, a lot of people have saying, oh, well, because we can't put our finger on it exactly where this happens in the brain, it doesn't exist. It's like, come on, no, it's the imagination is an actual
means we don't
tangible
have the
thing.
tools to measure it yet.
Right, exactly, which is crazy. So Wit and Adventures in Odyssey, there's no way, even as insanely, rich and everything else that he is, like, and brilliant, like, there's no way he creates something that can actually put you in virtual reality to where you feel things like that.
No.
But if he could actually use the imagination to actually do it, you see what I'm saying?
To lucid dream, basically.
But yeah, basically,
or along that line of
but using not drugs but technology to stimulate
to let
the
the imagination
synapses
itself fuel and neurologically affect the mind and its senses.
Right.
Yeah.
And that bridge, like, they reference how perilous that bridge is multiple times within Adventures in Odyssey. For those of you who don't, the one or two of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Adventures in Odyssey radio drama series. It's amazing. It's the Christian homeschool version of Doctor Who.
It is best radio drama in existence
ever. Oh yeah. But yeah, it's one of those things where that perilous bridge has yet to be even, like, slightly tapped, and I am more excited about that than just about anything when it comes to AI, because if we can start, we're having it not just work. I'm not even talking binary, I'm not talking quantum, I'm not talking anything like this is not mathematical. This is this is working off of fancy and taste, which is a whole other language that we have not mathematically scientifically traced, and it's a lot harder to trace. But I think it's traceable. I don't think it's fully breakdownable to binary, but anyway.
Yeah.
You got me going on the philosophy, man. Anyway. So like, what are your biggest, I don't know, there's obviously, we almost hear it beat into us, especially as guys, take care of your family first. You don't go and buy all that expensive gear, et cetera. But the biggest jumps in my life have been when I went out on a limb. I don't know if I told you this or not, but when I got my first full-time gig with Yonder Child, I think I told you this because I was working with you at the time, but I had a Note 8, Galaxy Note 8, and I was editing some random wedding footage for you as a side project.
I remember that. Yeah.
And I was doing it in Power Director on my Galaxy Note 8, basic stuff. And then I was doing it in between, not busy parts of my regular day job. And then one day, as I was working in an apartment, I had the phone up on a windowsill, and I think I had completed that project, and I was going to be doing another one for you shortly. I put up a new set of blinds, and they weren't fully secure, and the phone was on the sill, and they dropped down and cracked the screen to the point where it wouldn't even register touch. It was a bad crack. And I told Casey I need honestly a better phone at this point. And we barely had the money. Like, it was real tight for like a while. But basically I got a Note 9, I upgraded, and because of that upgrade, I was able to finish up that with you, and that was what landed me the full-time job with Yonder Child, was getting that footage to you and showing that I know what I'm doing. And then on top of that, I had to go take out a loan from my brother to get the MacBook to be able to be in Final Cut for you guys. You know, that's pretty much paid back now, but it's like, that's what you got to go through to get the job to do the thing.
Yes.
Don't hamstring yourself. So like, that's just one story, but like, I want to know from you, you know, this is part of the big question overall, but I'm just trying to get to the encouragement part, where people are asking you, you know, this question, that question, this gear, that gear, and you can give them specifics and help them with the specifics. But when they're trying to land that job, when they're trying to, you know, get out of whatever job they're trying to get out of, you know, Brendan Sunshine's talked with me about this some off and on, you know, like, I've been there, I know what it's like. And I just, what do you say to those guys when it comes to gear and they think the gear is going to save them, or you know, like maybe it is, you know, but like, what do you think?
It's difficult because depending on what specific league, major league or minor league of the ball game you're playing, is going to determine the gear. If you're in the minor leagues, having the gear yourself is a major advantage. Being able to buy the best bat, the best gloves, shoes that fit, is going to give you advantage over the guy who doesn't have those things. When you're playing in the major leagues, though, it's really more about the knowledge and expertise than it is the gear. Because in the major leagues, usually the money is there to buy the tools when the job requires it. Now, making that jump between minor leagues and major leagues is very difficult, though, because a lot of times you don't quite have all the experience you need to make that jump fully to fund the proper gear. But the tools that you use in the minor league are just not going to cut it in the major league. They just won't. Hardest thing for me to learn.
You cut out there. You want to start over with not gonna cut it.
Yes. So the minor league tools are just not going to cut it in the major league. And so you've got to make that transition. And that's been the hardest thing for me, is knowing when to put down the minor league tools and aim and invest in the major league tools. And that's hard because so often the minor league tools will still work,
right? But
they don't work within the pipeline that the major league players play in. It won't play in that ball field. Mixing my metaphors all up here.
That's okay.
But that's, I think, the hard part. And that's what, for me, most of my major league upgrades, like my computer, this rated hard drive that I have sitting next to me, things like that. I don't have it yet, but I'm eyeing a color accurate monitor. Tools like that usually I don't get them until I have to get them.
Right.
They're not I have free money, I want to get them. Usually it doesn't go like that. Usually I get them because I absolutely have to.
Right.
The rated drive, I could work off of a bunch of Western Digital hard disk drives that I buy at Best Buy and Walmart. I could get the job done technically, but that's where measuring that ROI comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Those things slow down my editing. And for me, being able to cut through, for me, it's not about the work that I'm doing is not about the amount of time I spent on it. I mean, yes, I'm paid hourly per se, but it's not really, I don't make money because of how much I spend on a project. I make money when the project gets completed.
Right.
So the faster I can get through a project, the quicker I can get paid for that project and move on to another project.
And the more you'll get paid for future projects.
Bingo. Yes. And that's, exactly. And that's the other part of the calculation that's, again, so hard to navigate and figure out when you should raise your price and when you shouldn't. So yeah, I have a rated drive here that cost me about $2,400. It is, except for my computer, probably the most expensive thing on my desk. And all it's doing is sitting there syncing Dropbox.
Mm-hmm.
But it gives me speeds that I can't get other places, and it allows me to edit, not quite at the speed of thought. I need a lot more hardware for that, but close enough. Certainly, it's a noticeable difference, marked difference over, having a regular hard drive. Now, the other side, if I really did want to edit at the speed of thought, I could do solid state drives. But those are pricey. They are really pricey. And I need a lot of storage as an editor because I'm being sent raw footage all day long. I'm working with terabytes of data.
Mm-hmm.
This is 24 terabytes of hard disk that I've got here on a rated drive. You don't want to know how many tens of thousands of dollars 24 terabytes of solid state is. Like, that's just not, the ROI isn't there for that. Not even talking MB&E or MB,
exactly.
Exactly.
Or whatever it is.
Exactly. So the ROI is not there for that yet. Eventually this cost will come down. But yeah, it's tools like that is not a glamorous piece of gear, but it is enabling me to do what I do better and faster. And the end result is that I am bringing in more money and providing for my family.
Right.
In that regard. And there are so many times. So this last couple of weeks, sickness running through our family. And it was really difficult because every day that I'm not working, projects are not being completed. And when projects aren't being completed, money's not coming in. If money's not coming in, my family can't go to the grocery store and eat. And so there's that constant, yes, I need to rest and recover, but I got to get these projects done at the same time. And so there's that balance. And that's something that working from home, my family has had to, we've had to find the balance in. Yes, I'm home and I'm available, but I can't just be always available. Right. I need to be able to work efficiently and well. Yes, if you need me, I'm here, but you can't take advantage of that at the same time. So it's all of life is this balance that you're constantly just trying to fine tune until you're dead. you're constantly fine tuning, and it's
like grinding and Tony Hawk.
Yeah. Exactly. You're fine tuning until you can perfect it, and then you pass that on to the next guy, and he totally botches up what you perfectly fine tuned. But give him time; he'll figure it out.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna wrap this, and then we can talk for a few more. But guys, you know the deal. Be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. I think that pretty much sums up what we were talking about. Mm-hmm. Remember, we'll see you in the trenches next time on Poets at War.
God of song, said the warrior bard, though all the world betray thee, one sword at least thy right shall guard, one faithful full harp shall praise thee.